Welcome to the Orthocast. Today our guest is Mark. He has a really interesting story. He's always been a truth seeker, and recently his family was baptized into the Orthodox Church. He actually sent me an email about this game that he's creating, and I thought it was really cool, and we're going to talk about that more later. But he's basically making this online game of St. John of the Ladder that you should all definitely go check out. But thanks for joining us. I think it's going to be a really great conversation.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. So my first question for you is, what was your upbringing like? Were you raised with any religion?
Yeah, it's interesting, because when you go to church as a kid, you're not paying any attention.
Yeah.
So, a question I have, well, not a question, but a way I'd phrase that is, what was I not bored with and what was I engaged with? And it was in church. So,
Yeah.
we did have something we went to, mostly, Easter, Christmas.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't anything that really influenced me other than, oh, that's another boring thing that adults do.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to try to pass my time as best as I can. So that's what I remember growing up.
Yeah. And was it like a Protestant or Catholic church, or what kind of churches?
It's Catholic.
Catholic. Yeah.
Yep.
And so you're going to all the classes. You see it as more of an adult thing. And so do you kind of like fall away from the faith in high school or in a college, or when did you start to get interested in religion again?
I'd say all the above.
Yeah.
What I was most interested in, and just tying it back to the game, was video games.
Yeah.
So then what really got my attention and captured it was you could make these worlds of fantasy, and you could play in them. You could be the main character. And, as a kid, if you don't remember, I've got a 5-year-old, but everything you do, like, it doesn't work out that great. It's not like you're successful in accomplishing much or whatever you're doing, but in the video game world, you're the main character. You could be whatever.
Yeah.
And you could win. You could win if it's a race or if it's a, whatever's going on. You could be successful.
Yeah.
And then that's what a lot of my time grew up. So when I was growing up, it was Atari with Pac-Man and all that. But then eventually Nintendo. And in Nintendo, that's when introduced multiplayer games. So you had like Contra. I know most start with like Super Mario, but Double Contra. There's still that IP still continues. Like they still make those games. And then Double Dragon was another one. It's a brawler. So you and another player. This is the first time there's a first and second person. But it was this idea of engaging with somebody else online. Well, not online, but through these games. And that was my first time of just feeling like, okay, this is life. Like,
wow.
The way that religion, like how we are in Orthodoxy, like when we find it, we feel like, no, this is life.
Yeah.
Right. But in the video game world, mentioning St. John of the Ladder, the first rung is renunciation of the world. So you renounce the world, and the hope is for love of Christ.
Yeah.
But when a young man or boy sees the world and they see the lies, they see the corruption, they see things that they want to get away from, and there's nothing to embrace except for video games. So this world opened up to me, but again, looking back as Orthodox, it was a world of fantasy. And so we, in our prayer and what we do, we don't do that. We don't go in fantasy. And so it I would say it would, I don't know if it did open up like doors for demons or these other things, but it really separated me from reality in a way that I think it does for most or for many. Yeah. And it leads to death minimally, in that you could be spending so much time doing something else. And I know that's something you ask young men and those who watch you, there's something else you can do more productive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's definitely a form of escapism. That's how it was for me, as I put thousands, tens of thousands of hours into video games and, neglecting my real life responsibilities. And, once I started to, feel kind of interested in really important questions. For me, first it was politics and then religion. But then I realized, video games, like why am I doing all this stuff for a video game character when I could be doing this for me in real life, like leveling up it in real life. And so did you hit like a rock bottom and realize like video games weren't enough, or when did you realize yeah.
Yes, I did. Realized that there was a game that came out called StarCraft, and it was really popular when it came out, especially for those who. There was also first-person shooters that were pretty big, but I wasn't as fast. I do want to tie it back to multiplayer, because at the time it was only 2 players, and just having to do with memories. And just for those who were watching too, my father. So we also had a Sega Master System, and so there was a game on there called Rambo 2. And on the cover of Rambo 2, it had Sylvester Stallone, and he was carrying a grenade launcher. Yeah. And then he had that bow around him, and if anyone's familiar with, or if you're familiar with Rambo.
Yeah. And
I don't know how long old, maybe 7 or 8. But I thought, okay, here's a fun shooter. And my father, he sat down and he saw it was Rambo, and he's really into Rambo. And so he played that game with me. And I said, whoa, this is amazing. Like, I can play video games with my dad. Usually it was just like, player 1 and player 2, one dies and the next one takes over. But here you're playing together. And it blew my mind. And just going to tie it back to Orthodoxy. Something's different when you're leveling up, like you were saying, by yourself, or you're just creating these characters by yourself. It's one dimension. Yeah. But when you add this multiplayer thing to it, it creates it seems like, relationship. So, with a triune God and how that's just part of our reality. Yeah. It takes this world of fantasy and it expands it out to say, someone else can be there in that world of fantasy with you. And in this case, it was my father, and really, and that was the only time we played, by the way. Other than that was it. But that memory stuck in me. One was the breaking point. It was in college, StarCraft. I was good at it. I was not good at physics and calculus, which was, I stacked up. I said, let me get these heavy courses out of the way so that I can, computer science. No, I was not feeling the calculus or the physics. And so I was failing those classes.
Yeah.
And while I was failing those classes, I was succeeding in StarCraft. So StarCraft, it's a strategic online game. Again, back to multiplayer. Here it's me versus another player. And there's a leaderboard, so it could fill your pride. You ranked up this leaderboard, and I just felt like the man. Like, there was streaks I had that just made me feel like on top of the world. While in the actual world, well, at least this portion of it in college, I was not. I was failing, and I started skipping the classes just to play StarCraft, because I didn't want to feel that despair. I'd sit in those classes. I'm like, I'm not getting it. Not the way that someone who's going to pass this class is going to get it. I think that's what happens with a lot of young men that I see who are in the world of video games, is that their real world, like, is not, well, it can seem bleak. They can have that perspective, despondency and despair. But in the world of video games, they could be the man. They could conquer the world. And it's deceptive. It's very deceptive.
Yeah. It's a hologram of what we should be doing, because we can do all those things in real life. Is you could actually be working towards building a local community, volunteering, getting ahead in school or your job, but instead you're just putting all these hours into a video game that give you that like instant dopamine. So you kind of had a breaking point where you're like failing this class, and then did you finally give up video games and start to like get on a path back to God, or what happened there? Yeah.
So I with my roommate at the time, I wrote a contract, and I said, this is pretty much as dark as things have gotten. I've kind of built a little what seems like life again. It's false life in this false world. And so I said, you know what? Until I get my act together, I'm going to stop playing this game. And so
Yeah.
I erased the game.
Wow.
And all my, everything I've done on it, and, character online, my leaderboard stats and all those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went ahead and in the contract, until I get a relationship, because at the time I wanted to hopefully, meet somebody.
Yeah.
And got my college grades up, because I ended up dropping those 2 classes.
Oh, yeah.
And those were the majority of my semester right there. So I think the other class I had was like a philosophy of religion class, which is a way that state schools pretty much brainwash people who are at all into religion into saying, no, all religion's dead. And I think Jay Dyer mentioned this thing that they want to make metaphysics like, oh, that's a thing of the past. We don't do any of that anymore.
Exactly.
And so they definitely have an agenda. Anyways, fast forward. And I had a sense at the time, making this agreement, that by the time I do have my stuff together, I do have a relationship, and then my college grades are fine, I won't need video games anymore. In this case, StarCraft. I wouldn't need it anymore. Yeah. But what pulled me out of that? It was just a sense of something else. It was just so dark and bleak.
Yeah.
And demons. When someone's in a dark place, I would say a lot of times when I went to college and I visited colleges, there are students who are suffering in another way. Yeah. And I don't know how to say it, but so video games is one like manufactured reality, but college can be another manufactured reality, right? Yeah. Where instead it's these ego-driven college professors, or that you need to please them. Now you're pleasing this man or this woman. And at the time, it was in California. Many of those professors, they were very leftist and proud to be communist.
Wow.
So, no God and no fully atheist. Yeah. And people were like, "Oh yeah, this is good. This is a good thing. This is progress."
Yeah.
But I don't know. God was there in little glimpses. Like I had a friend who saw that I was really doing down or being down. He said, "Mark, you're usually not like this." And I explained what was going on. And then he gave me a book. It was, we went to the school library, and it was a section of Tolstoy. So in his books, I think this is, not just talking with you about it, it was one of the steps that got me out of that despair.
Yeah.
Because I read some of his work, and, I know he's debated in Christianity, but his works at the time were one of the things I needed to snap out of it, to say that there's something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those figures are really important. Like, everyone has a starting place. They're not going to just get into the heavy, Orthodox theology. Maybe it is that initial bridge. Now I think for a lot of people it's like Jordan Peterson. It's not the ending place, but it gets them started. They're at such a low place and they're so lost. And this is just giving them some guidance. Is like moving them in the right direction. So you start, you have some friends that are good influences that are kind of, getting you to ask these kind of more philosophical questions, and you're getting your grades up and life together. And so when did you want to take Christianity seriously, and how did you find Orthodoxy in that process?
That's another fast forward, because again, being in California, there's mostly the influence is New Age, paganism, Eastern religion. So who reached out in that particular college were Hindu, and so they had their own their own cult. Yeah. I'd say, looking back at it now, but it was a place that we'd go to and we'd eat vegetarian food. Yeah. And then we I would do the chanting, and I thought, okay, this is better than no God.
Yeah.
Because at least they had God. So back to stepping stones, at least it was better than where it seemed to.
Yeah.
And so then again, just being in that lost phase, it's just grasping at whatever's there. And the unfortunate thing was being in something that was not Orthodox. It tainted my perspective as far as what Christianity was.
Yeah.
Because if it was in Catholicism, and then I did check out Protestant churches. I had friends who'd reach out, and I went to their church, and I thought they were entertaining. I went to many different Protestant churches. You know, they had the hands and the songs and the music.
Yeah.
I went to black churches where they were very, very enthusiastic. And I thought, okay, yeah, I felt like, okay, that's the Holy Spirit. That's cool. But it just seemed like another option. And just out of all these things you can pick from, it didn't stand out like, oh, this is going to save me.
Yeah. Wow.
And yeah. And so that was the same mindset I had. It'd be fast forward 2019. And then I hear about Orthodoxy just because I'm looking into conspiracy things. Jay Dyer stands out. And so then he had an interesting, when he brought up metaphysics and ontology and all you know, how these things that they try to kill him in modern academia. Exactly. I was like, okay, let me see what was going on there. And he mentioned Orthodoxy, but for me, he's at a high level. Like he can do things. Some things just fly over my head. And that's why I really appreciate Jay Dyer's clips.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And those bite-sized clips. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
And so when he mentioned Orthodoxy, and there's other online influencers. I was looking into Orthodoxy. Had me enough where I would go visit. I went 2019, the end of that. Well, let me back up just a little bit. I met a man, his name was Roosh V. And so Roosh had a bunch of online content. He was a pickup artist.
Yeah.
And then his sister passed suddenly. And he was busy in his secular life. And that passing woke him up. And it woke him up to Christ in a way that I don't think it, like he self-professed that it doesn't happen to everyone. Like grace doesn't just pour into you the way it did for him. But it was him and Jay Dyer, both of them, they just, like many people, just consuming their content. I like this guy. It's like a well, you know, like, I tapped into something. Let me see what else they have.
Definitely.
Eventually, he came to visit San Francisco. He was inspired enough to do a tour to let people know about the good word.
Yeah.
And so, even though he was new to the faith, also he had a sense that he had to do it.
Wow.
And so, I met him. I shook his hand. A friend of mine joined me, and we thought, okay, that was a fun evening. It was good. I found it, in terms I know now, like edifying.
Yeah.
But nothing really stood out. Nothing really said, okay, this is something I've got to really go check out. I thought, okay, let me bookmark again Orthodoxy. Eventually, I'll go check out a church.
Yeah.
But again, I was just jaded from. If someone invited me to church, Kyle, I'd go to the church.
Yeah.
But then they just seemed, in so many words, they just seemed the same. They were just like, okay, if you believe in Jesus, that's great. But again, it didn't really call to me. For 6 weeks after that meeting with Roosh, somehow some of that grace, just a little bit of it, I want to say it rubbed off on me. And that logisme, you know, like little, even little demons that just like shoot these ideas that, you know, they're not ours. Like a lot of that stopped. And I just thought, oh, okay, maybe I just had such a good time out there, and maybe some of his words really sunk in. But for it just to keep going, it became something else. It wasn't. It was nothing I've experienced before. It was grace, and I didn't know at the time it was grace, but it was. Because I think I was just so used to the demons. I was so used to these passions also. Like I would eat fast food every day. Pretty much every day I'd eat fast food. Yeah. I as prideful as I was too, I showed a buddy of mine, look at this. I ate a large pizza every day for 3 days straight. and this is before listening to Bruce's talk. But afterwards, for that 6 weeks, no fast food, no junk food.
Wow.
And I will say this too, no pornography. Mm-hmm. So that to me also was something for that extent, without any, I was a different person.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, slowly all those, the passions came back, and, I was back to my old habits, but I said it stood out so much that, just Orthodoxy just being another thing, it became a priority to say, okay,
yeah,
it was clear that something was going on. Mm-hmm. And so for someone to change that quickly, and just to hear someone's story and other people's stories that I heard about Orthodoxy, mm-hmm. it then told me, at least for where I was at, maybe there's something more to this that I needed to check out. Otherwise, if that didn't happen that way, again, there's just so many things out there. It's all distraction, Kyle. It's all distraction and deception. But if God wants you to check out something, it'll he has a way. Yeah, providence. Exactly.
Yeah, all these seeds being planted along the way, and that big seed, and that really stuck with you to make it a priority. A lot of people do get cynical about all these different denominations and religions. Just leads to how am I going to know which one's true? But this talk really had an impact on you. And so when did you finally say I'm going to go to an Orthodox church? And how was that first experience?
I'd say I found a Sunday open, and there was a church just 10 minutes from me at that time. Wow. And then I told my wife, what, I'm going to go check out this Orthodox church. And she didn't think anything of it. We had a young son at the time. And so then I went to go, and I think I came a little bit late. I saw how long the service was. Yeah. I said, well, let me take a look. So I went in through the narthex. It was a low ceilings, and it was dimly lit, I'd say. And I went inside. I saw people making the sign of the cross, and I thought, okay, let me just slide in the back somewhere. But this parish, it was slowly growing, even 2019. And so, I just knew, okay, everybody's standing, so I'm going to stand in the corner over here. Mm-hmm. And then I'll do the sign of the cross. But at the time, all I really knew who did the sign of the cross were Catholics. So I was using my left hand the whole time. But I thought, okay, I only when I met an Orthodox priest did he say, oh, we do it with the right hand. I said, oh, okay, all this time I've been doing this thing. Okay, let me do it this way then. But I thought it was neat. And then towards the end, I felt the same sense I did those 6 weeks. Yeah. A peace and a grace that I haven't experienced really, maybe in glimpses. I think here and there, looking into conspiracies and all, every now and then you'll look into something, and it's like you're trying to find treasure. Where's these descriptive truths everywhere? Yeah. And that, I think that's the attractiveness to being a truther. It's like, oh, I'm going to find the truth, especially here. We've got internet. Let me go find it. Everybody else is being deceived, but I'm not going to be deceived.
Yeah.
And so also with those little bits of truth, it's these little bits of grace here and there. Mm-hmm. But I think these are, now for me looking at it, I think there's signs like God is trying to say something with this grace. And if you're paying attention, it's something to pause and reflect and take a look at. I know with our daily prayers, I'm kind of bouncing around, Kyle, but with our daily prayers, I forgot who was saying it, but say morning prayers, say evening prayers, but sometimes something will hit you, and it'll have that grace.
Yeah.
And to just pause and sink into it.
Yeah. So after this experience going to the church, you kind of feel that grace. Did you continue to go, or were you like, that was interesting, but I'm not sure yet? Or how was that process between 2019 and getting baptized?
So who confirmed it? My wife. So I said the next week, I said, come on, you're going to join me to the Orthodox church. We'll bring
Yeah.
the baby. And then we went. And she said too, yeah, there's something else going on over here.
Wow.
She has kind of a sense for it. And then the whole lockdowns thing happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that didn't stop us. We still reached out to the parish priest there. Mm-hmm. And then he was kind enough to say, yeah, come on out. We'll just meet outside and we'll talk about Orthodoxy and what that might look like for you. And so he was, just like many of the priests, or I would say all the priests we've met, very patient, very kind with us, answered our questions. And I had too much judgment. I could just say I had too much judgment about, and this is a polarizing thing, the masks at the time. So certain people had one idea of the masks and others had another.
Yeah.
And that he was wearing a mask, I asked him about it, but he mentioned as far as obedience that the bishop asks him and other fathers, please wear a mask. And so he asked, that's what he did. Mm-hmm. And then for us, he was, again, kind enough just to take it off, just to show, I'm willing to show my face, but I put it on as part of the tradition. Yeah. And those two things, again, my judgment, Kyle, about obedience, I was just so like, and then these other things, they kept me like, okay, then it relegated Orthodoxy back to the stat. And it was me, it was my pride and my judgment. I put it back in the pile of like, it's just another piece of the buffet that you can have, in this lifetime. So that's about where what happened there.
Yeah.
I do want to speed up though to really answer your question to getting baptized. Mm-hmm. Even though we were participating in a non-denominational church, it wasn't feeding me the way I needed to be fed. Mm-hmm. And so then there was just different things going on. And I said, you know what, let me just go to the Orthodox church again. We moved out of California. We moved to another state. And so then the Orthodox church near us was about 50 minutes away.
Yeah.
And so we tried to go there. Things didn't really work out, but they only met about once a month, and if that. But there was another church that met every week. And so, but that church was an hour and 10 minutes away. And in my mind, saying to go an hour and 10 minutes versus the church that's literally like walking distance away from us. Like we could just go there, and that's our church, right? And we know people from the neighborhood, and we know, to say, okay, now I'm going to drive an hour, 10 minutes there, an hour, 10 minutes back.
Yeah.
As far as practicality and my logical mind, like I was like, well, I'll check it out, but there's no way I'm going to be going every week enthusiastically. And that's where we are now. We went to that church and they embraced us. And then again, back to that feeling of grace, or that sense of grace was there. And it at this time it stuck. God was so patient with me and my family that like I needed it to. I just needed some time for me to just get it out of my system, and said, no, you know what? I'm not driving this life. I think I'm doing okay, but it could be a lot better. And I know putting Christ first and asking Him like humbly, can you drive this? Because I could use help. And in Orthodoxy, I could really do that because of day to day. We're practicing day to day.
Exactly. Yeah. That's I've heard that with a lot of converts. Is sometimes it does take like a long time, and God is super patient. But as long as you're continually looking and you're asking God to guide you, eventually you're gonna be led home. And you were baptized into the church. Your whole family. Glory to God. And so that's really awesome that you finally got that home after all this spiritual searching. And And so, is there any advice you would give to someone who's kind of inquiring? Because there's people who are kind of going through this right now.
Go to the church. Go to the church, meet the people, talk to the people, and stay for coffee hour. Yeah. Stay for coffee hour. Because before in the first one I went to, I just popped in, and as soon as it was over, I was out. And I see people do that. I'm just checking it out. I don't want to go to coffee hour or kiss the cross or anything like that. I just, I was just back to the buffet. I just wanted to take a little bit here or there, just like it's a cultural experience. I just want to experience something new or something different. But there was a family that was also like us. They had young, I want to say a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old at the time. Mm-hmm. And my young son, when we met, it was at, we haven't seen anything like it before, but when those two met, they hugged each other.
Aww.
And so, so when they hugged, we're like, oh, usually we need to encourage them or they need some time together, but they hugged and said, then we looked at the family who brought them. And eventually that man, he became our family sponsor. Wow. Invited us to his home. I want to say shortly after that. And then we went there and he had, like many Orthodox do, just stacks and stacks of books. Yeah. And for whatever, I asked him, what should I look at, just as an inquirer to just get me started, get me looking that way. And so he recommended St. John of the Ladder. He asked, Mark, have you heard of St. John of the Ladder? I said, never heard of him. He said, okay, well, this is a book. It's not his exact book. It was 30 Steps to Heaven, which is this book over here. And so he recommended this one. He let me borrow it. I really got into it for a bit. And then something hit me while, again, that touch of grace is just like a powerful, gentle silence. I said, you'll be reading this the rest of your life. Yeah. Wow. And so I immediately put the book down and I prayed and, I ordered the book online. After that, the next Sunday I gave it back to him. I said, thank you for letting me borrow it. But, I loved it so much. I went ahead and I bought the book and, fast forward as Orthodox, we were reading it in our men's group, the actual St. John of the Ladder, Ladder of the Divine Ascent. Mm-hmm. This is what it's called. And it's a heavy book. And so we're very happy. We've got 2 fathers who attend our, have service at our parish. And so one of them, guided us through the book, and it really helped to see it from his perspective and just kind of breaking it down for us. But it's still, that's that idea of climbing the ladder.
Yeah.
Really stuck with me, that this is, and I like how you use that one meme, I'd say video where.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, where the animation, the guys climbing the ladder, the demons like, they've got these snares and the guy falls down and gets back up again. And you climb the ladder again. You keep trying. And it's an icon about that. And that was the inspiration for the game.
Yeah. And so you make the St. John of the Ladder game. I think it's really cool. I love the visuals and everything. I'm really excited about it. And so you kind of made this game to be, a starting place for people. It's just a fun little web game that they can, hop on, and then it kind of answers some intro questions to Orthodoxy. Is that right?
Yeah. If you go through the rungs, it's kind of like fortune cookie style. You can't, instead of somebody who has, I'm thinking someone who has no attention span, someone sent them the link. They're like, all right, I'll check this thing out. And then so rung 1, renouncing the world, it just has a little blurb about it. And they're like, okay, then you move on, you go up through the ladder. And at the end of the ladder, each rung, there's a demon. Mm-hmm. And if I do develop further, each demon can have its own kind of snares and personality and things like that. But it's just the same throughout until you reach the end. And the end goal of that journey, you start you're a pilgrim pretty much.
Yeah.
You're going through it, you're doing it also introduces the prayer rope. So
Yeah.
this idea of the prayer rope, and you can pray, and they may not be familiar with the idea of hesychasm and praying unceaselessly and all these
Yeah.
things, but it just, it just plants seeds in people's mind if they are
Exactly.
playing this quick free browser game,
Yeah.
and not really knowing what's at the end. And so what's at the end is a nice little Orthodox church, and inside there, it's a virtual Saint John of the Ladder. So he can answer their introductory questions. So sometimes I know people who want to invite their friends or their family into Orthodoxy. They'll send maybe a clip from you, Kyle.
Yeah.
Hoping that the clip is only like 3 minutes. Please watch this 3 minute.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen. And they'll send them other things, or they'll send them a meme, maybe like you've got great memes that you share out that hopefully, well, can you look at this meme?
Mm-hmm.
And this is just maybe another thing they'll throw. Hey, this is a quick browser game. It takes 3 minutes to pass. At the end, there's someone they can answer any question you have. So if you have conflict or challenge or anything that you don't feel comfortable saying to me, or maybe they got ideas about God that they don't offend you, whoever gave you the link, or just have other ideas that they're like, all right, I need that. If my friend or family wants me to really check this out, I've got these hangups.
Yeah.
So my hope is they'll put those hangups into the ask this Saint John of the Ladder.
Yeah.
And so Saint John of the Ladder can patiently and very clearly and concisely answer those questions. And though I just was so surprised by how well it could do this, and it has to do with the cohesiveness of Orthodoxy. Mm-hmm. Like these doctrines and these teachings we have, they fall into each other.
Yeah.
And to say there's nothing really magical about AI, there's a lot of polarization about like, oh, it's evil, or oh, we can use it for good. But like all of God's creation, we can do both, right?
Exactly.
And so in my mind, some were making the statement like, no, it's all downhill from here. Like it's the Antichrist and this and that. But what if all it could share is Orthodoxy? Yeah. And so in my mind, I just thought, well, people want to ask these questions, or they have these hangups, but they don't want to just blah, and make you feel like, well, or a new priest, maybe they are visiting, but they don't want to just tell the priest like, this is what I think. I think you guys are wrong, and here's why you guys are wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think everything you're doing is backwards, or you guys are being deceived. And this could be a secular person, or it could be someone from another, what we'd call denominations.
Yeah.
They don't want to attack somebody they just met. But with the AI, it has no feelings or anything, but they can attack it, and then the AI can present the answers back that we have, which I thought was okay. Hopefully this helps.
Yeah, I think it's super creative, and I'll have the link in the description if anyone wants to try out the game. And you can reach out to me or Mark if you have any ideas about the game or want to help at all.
My son, I let him play games. He learns his ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, and also how to smash monster trucks together. But he doesn't make it life. Like this morning, he woke up, and the first thing he did was ask me, "Daddy, we need to go out. We need to feed the chickens. We need to get the eggs." I said, "All right, son, let's go." Just to round this whole discussion out, back to my father and I playing Rambo 2. Again, he just played with me very briefly, maybe a few minutes or so, but that added another dimension to games that wasn't there before. So this is why St. John of the Ladder is a multiplayer online game. Instead of embodying Rambo, here you're embodying a pilgrim on a spiritual journey. While researching online is great, say like watching all of Kyle's videos, what pushed it over the edge for me was meeting Orthodox people. Again, I mentioned first Rush V, and to his credit, he has erased all online presence of himself. He just wants to be Orthodox and just live a quiet Orthodox life. Or my sponsor, like I mentioned, and I've got many other stories about meeting different parish priests, and that's the inspiration I have behind this game. Again, if you're not
at a point yet where you're willing to meet Orthodox people or meet with an Orthodox priest, you can do that in the game. And hopefully that blueprint of that gets seated somewhere in your mind, and you think, okay, well, let me just do it myself. Let me get in my car. Let me go drive to Orthodox church. I followed Kyle's lead here and how he has that link to Orthodoxy in America that shows you where your closest parish is. I've got that link listed all throughout the game, from the opening screen to, if you hit the menu, it'll say, do you want to visit an Orthodox church? To, at the very end, if you ask so many queries, I want to say after 3, you'll see a link. Hey, come on, visit an Orthodox church. Check it out. And once I made it as a catechumen, I would say I'd probably be the person who used it the most. I had so many questions. I don't want to necessarily waste Father's time, but you know how parish priests, they can be so busy, and so many inquirers now and so many catechumen. And I'm so happy that when I was inquiring, so many parish priests were patient and gentle with my questions. And as backup now, AI can help out. It's just like books. You could give a stack of books to someone, say, well, the answer to your question is here's a stack of catechesis books for you. You'll find it in there somewhere. Or you could have the AI go through that book list and figure it out and say, oh, thanks to Orthodoxy's coherence, everything just kind of lining up together, it's a very clean data set. And I think that's part of the reason why it works so well. Is there's not too many conflicts it has to deal with. It's like, oh, okay, well, this is what Orthodoxy says about this here.
But I think this was a really fun interview. I think the game is awesome, and how we can use these things for good, in moderation, using something like AI to promote something great like the Orthodox Church and answer these questions in a safe environment, in AI that's made for it. So, thank you so much for your time. God bless.
God bless, Kyle.